I'm Eric Wolf, and my experience in business peer groups has changed my life, especially my membership in Vistage, one of the world's largest CEO advisory groups. I'm an entrepreneur, a business owner, and a Vistage speaker on the power of marketing. This podcast is dedicated to the people who make those experiences possible, the peer group chairs. Every episode, I interview a Vistage chair who has dedicated their time to helping entrepreneurs like me succeed. My guest today is Mark Fackler, who hails from San Diego. And Mark, I don't say this to all the guests, but you have got one of the most fascinating bios. You sent me the bio that you sent me. It was an absolute tour de force. I laughed, I cried, I cheered. This was your whole story is actually kind of remarkable. From your admitted sort of early years where you didn't have a lot of direction, all the way to ultimately to starting a business, to selling a business, to running the Vistage group that you were a member of for a long time, to being you do a Vistage group at the University of San Diego or University of California, San Diego.
Right, UCSD, right?
UCSD. So this is like a whole fascinating thing. We've got a whole roller coaster ride. One thing that you put in your note that I was just like floored by, and this was at the very beginning of the tour de force. You said about yourself as a young man that you never had the guts to be the best.
Yeah.
What does that mean to you, and how does that frame sort of the start of your story?
I was the youngest of three boys, and my two older brothers were smart and talented. And it seemed that the talent that I had was to draft behind them. And so I learned very quickly that I could do a minimal amount of work and still be considered good. And that's a lazy way of life. It really manifested in wrestling. When the coach said, do 50, I did 45 push-ups. And I watched the great wrestlers do 60. And yeah, that was my life. Just sort of skating along, staying under the radar, not getting in trouble. Um, and then work started, and I found computers, and they fascinated me, and I wanted to learn everything.
And you were not a computer science major in college.
No, I was drugs and alcohol mostly, and that's not funny, actually. It was a gigantic hole I dug for myself, more of this lack of trying mentality that I had, skating along, getting through. Um, but when I found computers, it saved my life, frankly. Um, And then as I started to build the company, that was always I never liked to follow rules. I didn't want to be told what to do. I didn't understand when you run a company that everybody tells you what to do. Um, and there
It's
was
very
this moment.
relatable for me, by the way.
Yeah, I can imagine. There,
I once took a personality test that said I was unmanageable.
yeah. I feel bad occasionally for my members who leave a little bit on the table, and then they come and work for the private equity company, and
Oh,
I just see that their heads are going to explode having a boss, but they all seem to manage and do a good job.
do you
But
know
I had
do you know Brant
one.
Houston, the Vistage chair?
I do.
Brant Houston from Houston. He was a guest, and he talked about how he sold his company and ended up getting fired by the PE group because he was a lousy employee.
Yes, right. And that's what we tell our members too. Assume you'll be fired. Assume you'll be fired. But there was a moment when I was running my company, and again, I don't know, I had 25, 30 people working for me, and my vice president called me into his office and said we had a problem with a client, and that client happened to be a friend of mine. And I remember walking out of his office, and I leaned against the wall, and I thought, are you going to be a failure for the rest of your life? Are you going to not try your hardest and fail, or just, mosey along? And something switched inside of me, and I walked into my office and I picked up the phone and I did the hard thing. I made the phone call. I did what I was not really capable of doing. There were there there was just too many people who counted on me to do the hard work. And I think I was 33, 34 years old until I learned that.
Hmm.
Um, yeah. So it's been an interesting journey for me.
What changed for you when you made that commitment to yourself that it's going to be different now and I'm going to do the hard work? How long did that take to really manifest itself in your life?
Well, that was 33, 34. I'm 67. So it's been going. It,
Ongoing.
it is an ongoing problem. It's interesting, we carry with us, our childhood tendencies. And I always I have to remind myself, this is not about getting along. This is doing your best, not from an insane or obsessive point of view, but this is about trying hard and being willing to fail in front of other people, to be embarrassed by that failure, and then to come back again and say, okay, that didn't work. I failed. We failed. Let's pick up the pieces and go off and do it again.
Right. What when you decided to you started your own business
Yeah.
and you had a whole journey with that. What was the moment that told you that you should be an entrepreneur?
I um I grew up lower middle class. Um, I had a roof over my head. We had food all the time. But for some strange reason, I had this relationship with money. Um, I mowed lawns, I painted fences, I delivered newspapers at, 4:30 in the morning. And as, sort of the lower end of the socioeconomic scale in my town, I had more money than most of my friends. I I had a convenience store in college in my dorm room. I'd go buy chips and popcorn and cookies at the grocery store and then sell them at a markup in the dorm room. There wasn't a moment. I was sort of born this way. Um, I didn't. I don't like being told what to do. Um,
So it was a
yeah,
natural
so
progression
it
from
was a natural progression. What wasn't natural, and actually what Vistage provided me as a member, is I thought bosses told people what to do. And over 12 years of being a member, I learned that it was far more complicated than that.
absolutely when and I'd love to hear about your journey as a Vistage member because you're not the only person that I've talked to, obviously, that although it's less common than I would have thought, it's pretty uncommon that chairs were Vistage members prior, and then it's actually super rare. But I've definitely talk to people, the member who ends up being the chair of the group that they were a member of. So I would love to hear about your time as a member and your transition to chair and how that came about.
Sure. Well, I will say, um, I got a postcard in the mail one day, and it was a day that I looked through the mail. I didn't always look through the mail. I had staff, and that postcard said, "Is there a problem you're having and no one to talk to?" And oh my gosh, did I have one. I had a vice president who was smarter, stronger, faster, more aggressive than I was. He was my old boss. He was this tremendous asset that I had no idea how to manage. And so I called up Vistage Tech at the time. Pat Heineman showed up, a legendary chair in Vistage, and he offered me a seat in the group. And I was a sponge, an absolute sponge. I knew nothing coming into the group. Over, I guess the first 5 to 7 years, I went from asking all the questions to beginning to answer some of them. And I actually told Pat about 7 years into my 12 years of membership that I was going to leave the group because I had learned so much, and I'm only 38, so I'm really not very smart yet, but I think I am. And Pat was very calm with me, and he said, "Mark, you've learned a lot of the science of business. You can read financial statements, you know how to do strategic planning, you can manage people. You've got that science down really good. And everybody counts on you for that in the group, for, understanding, Mark, how would you deal with this? But what you don't understand yet, or what you haven't even scratched the surface, is the human dynamics, which is infinitely complex. And that conversation shifted me, such that I knew I would never know enough. And it was, the learning was infinite, and my growth was now infinite. It wasn't just the facts. It was the art of business, not the science of business. And I had an exit, 42 years old. I took 25% of I sold 25% of my stock and left the 75% on the table. Sadly, I lost the 75%. But when I left the group, Pat said, "Mark, you've been beat up a lot. You know a lot. You have this thirst for learning. You have this thirst for giving back. You need to become a chair." And that was in 2002. I became a chair in 2003, and I'll do it as long as my body and mind hold up.
What other than you got to push, but other than the push, what told you that chairing was going to be the next thing for you?
Pat changed my life. Um, as I said earlier, there were some dark times in my younger life, close to death, jail, and I pulled myself out of it with everybody's help, everyone's help, and it really wasn't a decision. It's a calling. 42 years old, and I don't have to work again, and all these people have helped me succeed, and I have to give back. And so it was obvious. And to have people occasionally thank me for a conversation I have with them is this unbelievable added bonus. But it really is I have to give back. Um, I just have to.
If I may ask, so you got to this point where you were 42 years old, and you wouldn't have to work again if you didn't want to.
Yeah.
And of course, that, like as you explained, I mean, even that was sort of a roller coaster moment of I just made a lot of money, but you ended up also losing out
Mhm.
on a lot as a result of that. So you you did a lot of things after you hit that milestone, and becoming a Vistage chair was only one of them. Can you talk through some of the other things that you have done since then that have been impactful?
Yeah. I Pat actually introduced me to a charity, and as I said, I don't like to follow rules. I don't like to be told what to do, and I thought it would be really fun to run a charity that I didn't found, that was founded with a passion of someone else's, and that I could learn how to serve someone and follow their mission and vision and values. And so that was, I spent 10 years working with an organization dedicated to stopping kids from killing kids, and learned a ton about forgiveness and love and what it is to work for somebody else's passion. I also got into Ironman. Um, that's this weird extreme exercise where you swim 2.4 miles, you bike 112, and then you run a marathon. Um, and that was 20 years of extreme physical and mental activity. And but I think more importantly, I should talk about what I did wrong.
I would I would love there. You mentioned all of the way that giving back was part of your passion. So I really wanted to give you an opportunity to talk about the nonprofit work and things like that. But yeah, what you like I said, you gave me this huge story, and it's got a lot of low points in it too. So I would love to hear about what those low points were like for you, and
Yeah.
what you learned.
Well, about 3 years ago, my wife and I were having dinner, and I I had just given up Ironman, which is an incredibly selfish time suck. And Kathy put up with it while I did this weird training, um, and she said to me, Mark, when you retired, um, our kids were 10 and 12, and you had coached them and all of that, but Kathy was clearly the primary parent, and she had sacrificed her career to allow me to work and to raise the children. And she said, I wished you had, at 42 years old, said, thank you for supporting me in this building of the company. And now I'm going to become the primary parent. And my kids at, 3 years, my kids have been gone for a decade. And it was this shocking statement to hear. Um, an not an embarrassment, a disappointment in who I was at 42 years old, that I couldn't understand, all the accolades that I received in business, radio and TV and covers of magazines and Inc. 500 and blah, blah, blah. I come home, in a suit and tie, and Kathy has a kid on her shoulder with vomit. And I didn't understand that sacrifice, and I didn't understand what my what my obligation was as a husband and a father. And that's probably the most important lesson I learned. I just learned it, unfortunately, almost 20 years too late. I am dedicated to being a great grandparent when that opportunity presents itself, and had learned a valuable lesson from Kathy, my wife.
And you've got two Vistage groups currently, and both interesting because one is the group that you were previously a member of, and then you are the first chair that I have talked to that is running a Vistage campus group.
Yeah, that I went to Chair World a year or two after I became a chair, and there was Gary Rubin was a very, very senior chair who ran this Vistage on Campus group at UCLA's Anderson School of Management, their MBA program. And he told me about it, and I said, "Oh, that sounds like fun." So I wandered down to UCSD and in 2007, and I've been doing it ever since. Um, it is just an honor to do it. I work with the executive MBA students. So, average age 35, maybe 45 in that, some of them are up in their 60s getting an MBA. And they're all way smarter than I am. Their intelligence is just off the charts. Um, they've got a job, they have a family, and now they're getting an MBA. And I get to meet with them once a month, and I get to expose them to a Vistage experience. I get to expose them to a CEO every month who comes in and has a conversation. And then they expose me to all this mind-boggling stuff they know, the biochemistry and the artificial intelligence and the engineering, and it's a privilege for me to do the work. 18 years and going now still.
That's amazing. And it's
Yeah.
funny because so many entrepreneurs and business leaders that I'll meet will say, hey, I saw that you're LinkedIn and you're involved in Vistage. What's Vistage? And people don't know that these peer groups exist until they just happen to stumble upon them. And a lot of people who do it will say, well, man, I really wish that I would have known about this sooner. I would have, and the idea that you've got business leaders who are probably already in some kind of, or had some kind of leadership roles, but obviously in school because they are looking for that next echelon, and to initiate them into that with a Vistage like experience is really cool.
Yeah, it's interesting. The students often say it's one of the most, if not the most valuable piece of their MBA. Um, they've got these amazing professors who teach them this amazing theoretical framework. And of course, they do a lot of, experimenting, so to speak, entrepreneurial experimenting in the program. But what I bring them is this is what it's really like. Um, this is what it looks like when it's not a polished PowerPoint presentation. This is what a leader goes through. And they get over the course of their 2 years, maybe 20 different CEOs who speak to them. And then we get to talk about it afterwards and to analyze all these different styles of leadership and personalities, and to give these students an, an opportunity to ask very personal and intimate questions to the CEO of anywhere from, a multi-billion dollar company to a 3-year startup is just, it's a privilege for me. It's a privilege for the students. And frankly, all the CEOs who come in say it's just an absolutely fabulous evening for them.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, and tell me about your CE group.
Oh, that's just, it's funny. It's a little over 50 years old. There aren't clear records as to who created the group. Um, we know the second chair of the group, and then Pat Heineman, the famous Vistage chair, was the third. I am the sixth chair of it.
And and
Uh,
and when I saw this, I kind of did a double take, but your group is actually from the questionnaire that you sent in, CE 12.
yes,
These are typically four-digit numbers now.
they are 5-digit numbers now.
Oh, really? Oh, I didn't know that. I've seen a lot of four-digit numbers. I
Yes,
haven't seen a five.
they are moving into the fifth digit right now. And it's interesting. I've been chairing that group for about 5 years now. They had lost a chair, a wonderful chair whose wife had gotten sick, and he had to step back from the group. And one of the members was in the group when I was in the group 20 years previous, and we had overlapped. And he said to the group, "Hey, there's this guy, Mark Fackler. Maybe he'll do it." And he asked, and I was honored. What's interesting about it is there's DNA in the group that persists. Um, the group started in, maybe 1973. I joined it in 1991. So between me and Jamie Ogle, the member who recruited me back, we've been in that group for 34 years. And when I joined, of course, there were people who had been in it for a decade. So all of these stories, all of this DNA, it stays with the group. And we learn from stories. And so the richness of this group is really quite unique. Um,
It's a
and
cool legacy.
it's a legacy, and what I realized, it's not my group. I am the current chair of this group that will persist forever.
You're a steward.
I am the steward. And it took about 2 years for me to understand really what my role was. My role is to sit in the seat until someone else sits in the seat and let the members do the work.
It's like the Tonight Show.
And I would then have to say that, well, I think there was Jack Parr and then Johnny Carson, but I'm going to say that Johnny Carson and Pat Heineman were the two greatest of all time. There you go.
There you go. Amazing. What would you say is the last question before I let you go? You have obviously had a very long and multifaceted history with Vistage. What is the best lesson that Vistage has taught you?
Um, Pat, when I first joined, he said, "Mark, what's the most important thing in business?" I said, "I don't know." And he would hold up his finger and he would say, "Cash." And then his next finger, and he would say, "Cash." And then his next finger, and he said, "Cash." And he taught me that. He beat that into me. And then about 5, 6 years into it, we were in a Vistage meeting, and Pat asked everyone, "I want you all to say what the most important thing in business is." And of course, so, went around the table. The first member said cash, because we've all been taught. Someone might have said product innovation, strategy, marketing, and it got to me, and I very proudly said cash. And Pat was sitting next to me, and we all said, Pat, what's your answer? And he said, love. And that's what Vistage taught me. That is the single most important learning I ever got out of Vistage is we might be running businesses, but if it's not based in love, if your decisions aren't based out of love, you're not swinging the bat right. That's what our job is. Build a business. Cash is important, but it's all about love, and that's what Vistage taught me, and that's what I'll continue to teach everyone that I come in contact with.
Mark, thank you so much for being a wonderful guest. This was terrific. If folks want to get in touch with you, what's the best way?
Oh, Mark at markfackler.com.
All right. If we have questions about Iron Manning or Vistage certainly, or selling a business, those are all things that Mark can help you with. Mark, thank you so much. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you, Eric. This has been terrific. I appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Chairwaves. You can subscribe to our feed using Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or your platform of choice. You can also visit chairwaves.com for more information. Chairwaves is hosted and produced by me, Eric Wolf, and to connect with me, you can visit my website at ewolf.live. That's EWOLF.live. And a disclaimer, while I love Vistage and CEO peer groups, this podcast is not owned by or affiliated with Vistage or any other peer organization. Thanks for listening.